excited to be here because I love debate, and that's what this is all about this evening. A significant portion of this is going to focus on an opportunity that audience members will have to ask candidates about their election. This evening we're going to see basically 7 candidates presenting in one form or fashion. We have 3 presidential candidates, 3 vice presidential candidates, and a secretary running unopposed. The format this evening, in order to kind of hear the arguments for each candidate, is to allow in the contested races of vice president and president, the 3 candidates to be at the podium and give an opening 4-minute speech. At the end of that 4-minute speech that each one of them will give, the other 2 candidates will have an opportunity to ask a question during a 1-minute cross-examination period. So, in essence, each of the 3 candidates is going to get a 5-minute period. 4 minutes of opening, 1 minute of questioning by their fellow candidates. We're going to do that procedure for both the president candidates and the vice president candidates. Then we'll allow the secretary to give some opening remarks. We're not going to do cross-examination in that unopposed case. And then in the middle portion, about after half an hour of that, I will moderate questions from the audience. And what we're going to try to do, and this might be a little bit unusual, ask you as audience members to direct your questions to a single candidate in order to be most efficient. All right? So we try to focus on one candidate if you'd like to ask a question, and we're going to try, I'm going to moderate, try to get as many candidates answering questions as possible, because we're only going to have about 12 to 15 minutes of audience question period, and then we're going to go to a closing remarks. Each candidate is going to get 1 to 2 minutes to give closing remarks about their candidacy before we finish at hopefully close to 6 o'clock. So these procedures have been explained to the candidates, and so I think we are ready to go. I have Catherine helping me here at the front. She's going to be the timer, and she can provide time signals for our candidates. And so without further ado, let me ask our presidential candidates, Sam Mansfield, Katie Perkins, and Austin Prentice, to go ahead and take their positions at the podium. And we place them up here in alphabetical order just to kind of be as fair as we can about that. But at this point, we're going to be implementing our time procedures, and I would call upon Sam Mansfield to give his opening remark. Question?
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that's come out here today, and to all the candidates that are running. We're greatly represented right now. These are all fine candidates. Campaigning for me started a long time ago, I feel like. I've been on this campus now for 2.5, almost 3 years, and I'm a junior. Leadership roles are something that I've been involved with for many years of my life. I've served in YPO, Young Presidents Organization, Special Olympics, Presidential Classroom, and worked with the Muscular Dystrophy Association for about 10 years now. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my platform, but first I want to tell you what I would be about as I work for the Esmond community. I talked to a few alums on running for student government, and they gave me a few ideas that I wanted to propagate as I move forward. These are transparency, accountability, communication, and efficiency. As we move forward as a governing body for SMU, I want transparency to be key so that nothing is unknown in the circle from students to faculty. And also accountability. If we spread the work among all the leaders on the campus, holding each other accountable, I think that we can get a much larger job done than if we're working individually. Communication is something that I'm going to touch on a little bit later, so I'm going to come back to that. And I think when you have these first 3 things, you can really balance out with great efficiency. So the first part of my platform I'd like to talk about has been a recent issue that's been coming up that I'd like to solve. That's student involvement and representation. 2 examples that came up most recently have been the LGBT community and the student athletes community. And for both of these and any other organizations that come forward that seek representation in Senate, I suggest that we rewrite pieces of the student constitution to put subcommittees under student concerns. That's going to put a lot of work on the Student Concerns Committee, but it's going to help us make sure that we're representing not just schools that we've seen in the recent Daily Campus article, but different organizations and different groups of people on campus. That's basically helping us with special interest seats, because a special interest seat can give us 1, maybe 2 people in representation. Subcommittees can give us up to 15 people getting involved and getting a voice out. The second thing I'd like to talk about is ALEC revamping. If you've ever looked at the ALEC mission statement, the end of it is to help students succeed at any level in the undergraduate curriculum. For those of you that have moved past the 3,000 level at SMU, you may find yourself having a lot of trouble getting help with ALEC. The best thing that we can do is augment the staff, so there's at least 2 tutors starting next year per 1,000 level per school. This can be students, TAs, or full-time professional tutors. Working for this will give each of us an opportunity to use the organization ALEC that's been so heavily advertised to all of us when we were freshmen, but we're not getting the help out of it that we were promised. That's something that needs a lot of work. The third thing that I'd like to talk about is sustaining and revamping the image of the Greek system. I am a junior Fiji here at SMU, and in a lot of ways, I'm not entirely happy to say that because there's a negative image currently portrayed on the Greek community. However, 41.25% of the SMU population of students, they are Greek. And if this is going to be such a large percentage, they have a large voice, they have a lot of members, they have a lot of money, and that gives them a lot of power. And we need to find a way to reverse this image, reconnect it to the student body since there is a schism that's been growing recently, and work with it to achieve the goals that we all want to propagate as students, and that's a connectedness on campus. That brings me to my final point. And this is especially relevant with the recent article in the Daily Campus, and that's connectedness and spirit on campus. Mustangs move in herds, and currently I'm not seeing enough organizations working together, supporting each other, moving toward a common goal. In that space...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're going to have to stay really tight on the schedule, so that was 4 minutes of presentation. At this time, Katie and Austin, do you have a question you'd like to ask Sam?
Yes. Sam, you talked a lot about transparency. Could you please maybe give an example of how you have worked for transparency in your past year in Senate?
Certainly. That's a great question. For me, transparency really means nothing being kept in the student body as we work in Senate. So one thing that I've worked to do to increase transparency mostly is meet with individual Dedman 2 students, since that was my constituency. Every senator has a Dropbox where you can put in complaints or suggestions or concerns. My Dropbox wasn't used one time during this year, and that will ultimately negate transparency. If I'm not hearing the concerns, but I know that they exist, so that's something that I try to do, is work more one-on-one meeting students. That's pretty much it. That keeps popping off, too, so I'm looking at that.
Okay, I think that is going to consume the cross-examination time. We're going to have to go ahead and move to the statement of Katie Perkins.
Hi, my name is Katie Perkins, and I'm running for student body president. The reason you should vote for me is because I'm the candidate with the most experience, the most accomplishments, and the most passion. I served as a first-year senator, my first year organizations chair, my second year, and I've served this year as student body secretary. My accomplishments include facilitating the chartering of new organizations on campus, coordinating 2 involvement fairs in conjunction with SAMHSA staff, and sending the minutes out to the entire student body. I'm passionate. My favorite colors have and always will be Harvard red and Yale blue. My family history is really tied in with the universities. I'm a 4th generation SMU student. My father, both my grandparents, and my great-grandfather attended SMU. My parents kissed for the first time on the steps of Dallas Hall. They were engaged for the first time on the steps of Dallas Hall. I love this university. And the reason I love this university is because of its diversity. I've also spent a lot of time with the organizations on this campus and their events. I've attended events in this past year and in years past from Association of Black Students, CHAZ. I've attended all the football games, Indian Students Association, all the events during Martin Luther King Week, Hughes-Trigg birthday parties, the Muslim Student Association events, and the African Student Association events. As president, what I really plan to do is organize the Student Senate. If the administration doesn't take us seriously, if the student body doesn't take us seriously, how are we expect for anyone to take us seriously? We have to organize, we have to do that through training, we have to implement our policies and procedures that we do have, and there has to be a significant amount of planning. I hope that you will consider all of that when you vote on Wednesday and Thursday and help me perk up Senate. Remember to vote Perkins for president. Thank you.
question. Katie, a lot of your platform has to do with kind of Senate logistics, which is the student body vice president's job and the secretary's job. You don't have many things on your platform the actual student body president is supposed to do, which are tangible things to get done on campus. I would like you to comment on that and maybe just comment on the fact that what you're doing about communication, which is the secretary's job, and cleaning up the logistics of Senate is the vice president's job. Could you just comment on the fact that those aren't the president's job?
I disagree. I think that it is the president's job to make sure that everything is running smoothly in Senate. Also, I do have some things on my paper that can contribute to the entire student body, and it would be the president's job. Campus unity, I want to see more social events on campus and communication between the student body and student senate. So that's how I would answer that question. Also, well, that's all I'm saying.
We just have 5 seconds left, so we're going to go ahead and move to our final presentation. Austin,
Hey guys, my name is Austin Prentice and I'm running for student body president. I'm a junior from Portland, Oregon, up in the Northwest, currently studying biology and political science down here at SMU. I currently serve as a student body vice president, where I've worked feverishly to just kind of get Senate turned around and get in the right direction this year, passing the most pieces of legislation amongst the 3 people running. And this experience and this knowledge will help me to make for an easy transition if elected student body president. This will allow me more time coming from this position. This allows more time to actually focus on what matters, and that's kind of your voice in this platform and just getting this quality of life at SMU kind of increased. We go to the best school in the country, and I'm going to say it now, and I feel like you guys would agree with me mostly because that's why you're in this room and that's why you care about this school. We do pay a lot for our school, but it's completely worth it. And I think there's a quality of life at SMU that's incredible, but I think there's some areas in each kind of field and department that could be increased or worked on to make more efficient that will increase the overall quality of life here at SMU. I've been very involved around campus, whether it be for the athletic department, the men's basketball team, or residence life as an RA in McElvaney Hall last year, or religious or political organizations or student senate serving right now. These things will help come together for me to get an idea and kind of an understanding of what it is that SMU wants to do. I think it's very important for the president, the student body president, to be proactive and reactive. I think there's a fine line and you have to do both equally well. The proactive part is, this is my platform and I need to go out there and try to implement it and see what they say. This is what I'm running on and this is what I promise to do. For me, this includes Bridwell and Hammond libraries, amongst others around campus. They close too early. They close at 11, midnight, sometimes 10, depending on the night of the week, respectively. Fondren after midnight, I'm sure many of you could attest to this, becomes a little loud. It becomes a little rowdy, and it's tough to focus in there. I want to create more options for students to study around campus after midnight, because a lot of students study, and this is really targeted towards kind of the first years and the second years that live on campus, just giving them more options. They don't have to walk all the way to Fondren if they live in South Florida. Another thing is parking. Right now, Parking Pony only sells 1 parking pass, and it's take it or leave it. I'd like to see more specificity in parking. A lot of people park in the same garage each time. A lot of people only come to class in the morning or the afternoon. I think you should be able to buy a more specific parking pass targeted to, well, I park in an airline garage every day, therefore I'll buy an airline garage only pass at a reduced price. So you kind of give a little to get a little. And then another thing is just graduating seniors. Right now, graduating seniors have to go through way too much to graduate. They've been paying tuition here for 4 years, and they still charge a $45 graduation fee. Albeit small, but that's still another fee. There are many advising, many appointments. You have to register by a certain date. I think graduating at SMU is a huge honor. I think they need to kind of make it easier to actually do once you've accomplished all your classes and everything you need to work for. My job, and then that was the proactive part, and then the reactive part is you guys. That is the student body, and that is the voice. And I think these are a 50-50, they go hand in hand, they tie in. I think just hearing the voice and taking that to the administration, I have great relationships with the administration, and so I think that'll be easy for me to relay the voice. For example, the student body president meets with President Turner now and then, when needed. Well, I would like to let you guys, the student body, know when, if elected, I'm going to meet with them, so I can take your ideas. You can tell me what you want me to say, and I take them to him. Also, when I finish the meeting, I would like to type up a blurb, or kind of a blog kind of thing, to actually relay back to the student body about meetings and things going on in Senate. Because there are a lot of meetings and things that the student body president gets to have that I think need to be open and let you guys know what's actually going on. So please, tomorrow and Thursday, vote Austin Perkins for student body president. Thank you.
Okay, we have 1 minute for questions from Katie or Sam.
Okay, I have a question. There's a lot more to Senate than just regarding legislation. I have sent the minutes out to the entire student body, facilitated numerous organizations through the chartering process, and coordinated 2 involvement fairs in conjunction with fancy staff. Excluding the legislation you've written, could you please list 3 of your greatest accomplishments in the Senate?
Yep. I've done my job this year. And as student body vice president, you are president of the Senate. So what you do primarily is to make this chamber that meets on Tuesdays at 3:30 run more smoothly and more efficiently. I've implemented one-on-ones, which in the past have been kind of hit or miss. I've implemented one-on-ones both in the fall and the spring semester with all senators, just to make sure that we're on the same page, that we're coming back to make sure that we know what's going on. I've made a seating chart that is currently being followed where everyone's sitting by school, so you know where to go to. If you come in, you know who to speak to if I'm speaking about a Lyle or a Meadows kind of issue. I've also worked just to get Senate's name out there. I'm involved in many organizations, and I've really just been encouraging speakers all year to come in and speak at Speaker's Podium, which is at the very beginning of Senate, where they get to share their voice. So those 3 things, 2 of them organizing Senate, and the other one is just getting Senate's name out to organizations and chapters around campus.
All right. Thank you, candidates. And again, to the audience, maybe make a note that you just kind of heard from Sam, Katie, and Austin. If you're going to do a question, you might want to say, I have a question for Sam and Katie, but we're going to do that later. So make a little note to yourself as you watch these individuals. We're going to ask you to go ahead and take a seat. And we will call up our next set of candidates. These are the vice presidential candidates. And speaking to you will be Ehmke, Joe Esau, and Roza Esau. And they are again on alphabetical order. And so we will begin here with Alex Baker.
Hi everyone. Again, I'd just like to reflect everything the last couple of speakers said. We really appreciate you guys being here. This is a really unique opportunity on this campus, and we're glad that you guys have all chosen to listen to the various candidates and hear what we have to say. My name is Alex Ehmke. I'm running for student body vice president, and I just want to tell you guys really quick about why I'm doing that. Every single year, President R. Gerald Turner has a leadership conference in August. It's mostly attended by freshmen who want to know more about the campus and want to know more about why they chose to come here and what this campus has to offer. And one of the things that President Turner always stresses, along with various other student leaders on this campus, is that this is a campus that pushes their students to lead, that values their opinions, that encourages them to approach the administration and be proactive and bring up policies that they might like to see, to bring up change that they might like to see. I was always inspired by that. I'm inspired to go to a campus where student opinion is genuinely valued, and that's one of the reasons why I want to run for student body vice president. That being said, it's not just a gift from Southern Methodist University that you get to become leaders. You also have a responsibility to those that you represent to lead and to lead effectively. So that being said, I'd like to just go over really quick some of my time that I've spent in Senate and some of the things that I would like to do next year as student body vice president so that you might feel comfortable sending me to that position so that I can represent you. This year, in these past couple of years, I worked on finance legislation that will, by the comptroller's estimation, free up about $100,000 next year for student organizations. Again, this is common sense stuff. We moved from annual budgets to semester budgets. It frees up $100,000, and that money can go to organizations to put on greater events, to build greater community, to put more free food out there on campus. Again, this is just stuff that we need to do. It's common sense, and it's the kind of stuff that student body officers should recognize and proactively seek to do. Another thing that I've done that was actually sophomore year was in partnership with several other senators, including one of my other candidates, Roza Esau, was to work on dining hours. Several other freshman senators, including Ms. Esau, wrote a piece of legislation to extend dining hours on campus because freshmen after 7 a.m. couldn't find a place to eat. They wrote the legislation and then nothing kind of happened for a couple of months. And so myself and 2 other senators worked with Humphrey's staff, worked with the Director of External Services in order to make sure that extended dining hours would not just be on paper, but it would actually happen. Now, working as student body vice president next year, there's a couple of things that I'd really like to accomplish. First and foremost, I'd really like to see some form of outside participation on the Park and Pony appeals process. I just don't see how it makes sense for Park and Pony to give you a ticket and say, hey, if you don't think that's fair, please feel free to appeal it to me. I feel like there has to be some sort of third-party regulation, maybe perhaps a senator who is assigned to hear appeals, in order to ensure that there is some safety, some sort of protection for students, that they are not targeted unfairly. Another thing that I might like to work on is reading days. Thus far, this seems to be kind of wishy-washy, whether or not we're going to have reading days. We're going to have 2 this semester, 1 this semester, and none the next semester. I think that it is absolutely vital that students have the adequate amount of time in order to study before their finals. At many Ivy League law schools, they had as much as a week to do reading days, and I think that that would be truly vital that we have that adequate amount of time. The administration responds that students will take advantage of this time in order to party and behave irresponsibly. I respond that you can't punish the student body as a whole for the actions of a small few. We should all have rainy days, and we should all have the opportunity to do our best on our finals. The last thing that I would like to do is I would like to represent you when it comes time to make those important decisions regarding sophomore housing. That's going to be one of the most drastic changes that takes place on this campus, and I can really appreciate the fact that we need strong student leaders who are willing to talk to the administration and represent student opinion. That being said, these are some of the things that I'd like to get done as student body vice president, and if you think they sound like good ideas, I'd appreciate your vote on Wednesday and Thursday. Thank you so much.
We have 1 minute for questions from either from Joe or Roza.
I have a question for in your leadership positions as Chief of Staff and Finance Committee Vice Chair, how have you stepped up above and beyond what is required of you to represent student organizations on campus and students' voices without bias or bias?
My question actually relates to that, so I'll add on. You served as for 1 year, you served in an executive position as Chief of Staff. So excluding writing pieces of legislation, in what ways the role of Chief of Staff is to oversee the chairs. But while you were Chief of Staff, the Scholarship Committee had errors, the Student Concerns Committee wasn't running, as well as that, and the Communications Committee. So to add on to his question, in what ways, besides legislation, did you implement your job as the chair, as the Chief of Staff?
So just to clarify, do I have about 15 seconds to answer these 2 questions? I'm sorry? 10 seconds. Okay. Well, I'd just like to respond that as Chief of Staff and as Finance Chair, going above and beyond, again, that finance regulation, the budgets have been done on an annual process for about a decade. And, it takes somebody who truly has common sense, working in partnership with one of the presidential candidates, Prentice, and my Chair Loam, to actually recognize that something was flawed, that something was wrong here, that we were allocating money to organizations and they weren't spending it, and that this was wasteful. It takes dedication and it takes forethought to recognize that problem and to proactively seek a solution. That is going above and beyond.
All right. Let's move on to Joe, Esau, and your opening statement.
Good evening. I would like to take this time to thank everyone for coming out here and showing your support for the student body officers. My name is Joseph Esau, and I'm running for student body vice president. A little bit about myself. My freshman year, I served as Lyle Senator in the 95th Student Senate. During that time, I was able to work on parking legislation and communicate with Parker Pony and any relevant issue that students may have. I also was learning about the committee structure and the rules of order in Student Senate and to ensure that the student voice was being heard. Such issues came up as well as mandatory health insurance coverage and reinstating diplomas at graduation. My sophomore year, I was chair of the Research and Recommendations Committee, as well as the Lyle Senator. And during that time, I worked to restructure the governing documents of the Student Senate, the Student Body Constitution, and the Student Senate bylaws to ensure that the students will have an easier time understanding what the governing process is here at SMU. This year, I was elected parliamentarian of the Student Senate, as well as chair of the Hughes-Trigg Student Senate Governing Board. Some of my accomplishments this year included to increase student representation on the Hughes-Trigg Student Senate Governing Board, to include representatives from the SAMHSA, Chaplain's Office, LCI, and the Women's Center. I also worked towards getting a kitchenette in the Premier Lounge to ensure that students will have a place to bring food from home and heat it up and store it. Also this year, I worked on, working with the Hughes-Trigg Student Center to provide basic AV tech services to student organizations, and that's something, thankfully, I could say that will happen next year. During my time as Lyle Senator, I helped out Lyle organizations with learning about the chartering process, the Finance Committee budgeting process, and ensuring that their student concerns are heard on this campus. I wrote legislation this year to provide support for tutoring for upper-level academic classes, to increase public transportation on this campus, to include weekend service, and to codify the Student Senate affiliate program to make sure that organizations on this campus have unparalleled access to their senators and to their student senate. The bottom line is, as student body vice president, you need someone that is knowledgeable, experienced, and dedicated to addressing the issues of our student body. As student body vice president, you need to have the experience to train senators on this campus and give them the tools necessary for success. As Senate parliamentarian, I have that experience, and I will ensure that the student body vice president will be able to coordinate the activity of the student senate, be able to implement the semester budgeting process for committees, as well as ensure that all legislation passed by the student senate and all pertinent activities gets relayed to the administration. But most importantly, a student body vice president needs to be able to represent all students on this campus equally and without bias. I have, and I will continue to do that. As your student body vice president, I have the experience, knowledge, and leadership qualities necessary to lead the student body into SMU's second century. As my record shown in the past, you should not expect any less from your student body vice president to go above and beyond what their role is. My name is Joseph Esau, and I'm running for student body vice president. Thank you.
Okay, 1 minute question from Alex or Roza.
Sure, I'll take it. I think we can all agree that you've done a wonderful job in the Student Senate. Can you tell us, being a leader is not only about your accomplishments in Senate, but what have you done to reach out to the students outside of Senate, and what kind of experiences and leadership you have outside?
Yeah, of course. Some of the organizations I'm involved outside of campus includes IEEE at SMU, which is the largest professional networking organization on campus, which is targeted for electrical engineers, as well as I'm the Sergeant at Arms for Alpha Phi Omega, which is the community service fraternity here on campus, as well as being involved in the Hughes-Trigg Student Center Governing Board. And one of the big things that I've worked on, regardless of my role in Senate or outside of Senate, is to ensure that students know what's going on within this chamber and that all relevant information, because there are a lot of student organizations who do not know how the finance process works, what student concerns are addressed on this campus, and they don't know how the chartering process works, and that is not right. There are students on this campus who voices are not being heard and they feel neglected. So part of my experiences in Senate and organizations will help strengthen my candidacy as student body vice president, ensure that the Senate and senators and chairs have the tools equipped to become successful.
Thank you, Joe. And we are ready to move to the final candidate statement, Roza Esau.
Hello, thank you guys all for coming. My name is Roza Essaw, and I am also running for Vice President. I've been in Student Senate for 2 years. My first year, I knew that I've always loved student government, so within 2 weeks I jumped onto the elections, ran for first-year senator, and I was elected with the highest number of votes to represent the first-year community. And as a first-year senator, one of the things I worked on was I took the initiative to help write with the other first-year senators a legislation to extend dining hours for Umfrey and Max Place, and I had meetings with them numerous times. The managers of Umfrey and Max Place weren't receptive, so I requested multiple meetings. I did a lot of research. I brought in the inputs. I went around and interviewed over 100 first-year students and brought their inputs in. I also brought students to come to Senate and to speak about their experiences and why we should have extended dining hours. And so with the first-year senators, we were able to pass it. And so with the unanimous passage of the legislation and with a lot of research, it's no surprise that we have extended dining hours for Umfrey and Max Place. In my sophomore year, I was appointed to become the membership chair, and as a membership chair, I worked to interview candidates, and I filled in over a dozen seats in Student Senate, both chairs and senators. I have also read applications and just had one-on-one meetings with students discussing their interest in joining Student Senate. So that tells you not only do I have experience being a senator writing legislation, but I also know the intricacies in how Senate runs and how that works. And, so that's awesome. All of us have experience in Student Senate, so what sets me apart? Though my opponents may have half a year experience than though I may be the youngest one, I still believe that I represent the most unique experience. If you look at my leadership record in other organizations, I'm involved in over 10 organizations on campus. And it's not the number that's impressive. Rather, it is the diversity of organizations which I'm involved in. I'm here representing the views of students from campus ministry organizations, students from service organizations, students from political groups, students from communication groups, students who serve on boards that advise President Turner. So if I understand how the views of students from a wide variety come from the interests of diverse group, I think I can do a pretty good job representing you as Vice President and relaying your issues. And I'm also a Hunt Scholar, so as you can see, my record as a leadership qualifications are unmatched. So if you elect me, what I hope to do, I'll tell you. Unlike the other candidates, I don't have a laundry list of things that I want to accomplish because honestly, I don't think this election is about me. I think this election is about you and you. What are your interests? What are your issues? When you tell me, Rosa, this is what we want you to work on, I'm going to put that into action. But that's not to say that I'm a candidate without any qualifications or platforms. One of the things I want to work on if I'm elected is I want to make sure that senators are required to have specific office hours and to make those office hours known to the student body.
Because too many times students come up to me and say, I don't know who my senator is. Well, that's a problem, because if you don't know who your senator is, then that means that your views and interests and issues are not being represented. Another thing on my platform is I want to make sure that we have, we require 2 reading days, both in the fall and the semester, because I know how stressful it is trying to cram for exams without having any reading days. And so when you look at my leadership qualifications and that I've served as student senate for 2 years, and you look at the fact that I'm here representing the diverse interests of students from various organizations, and you look at the fact that I'm here not first to just implement my agenda, but to listen to your issues, your interests, and your concerns. And also I've come here and listened to the issues and what the students have relayed to me and say, this is what you want to accomplish. I think you should vote for me for just 3 words that I represent. I don't really have a slogan or any cheesy signs, but 3 words describe who I truly am. I think I'm genuine, driven, and passionate. And with those 3 things, I believe I can become the best, represent you as the best vice president that I can be. Thank you.
Okay, questions from Joe and Alex.
Rosa, as you know, as many members of the Senate know, you can't just write legislation and have it be done. What we say in here and what we approve of here doesn't necessarily go into policy. So I was wondering if you could give an example of, in your 2 years in Senate, of a policy that you wanted to see implemented, that you subsequently wrote legislation on, and then followed through and got it done.
Definitely, I can give you various examples. One of them, as Senator Ehmke said, it's true. It's not just about writing legislation. When I put effort into it, it's about research. It's about requesting meetings. It's about having debates. It's about bringing the issues and the views of the students to come and speak to Student Senate. And so once the students were able to come here, when senators heard their concerns, once I had multiple meetings with the managers, after that, and once I written the legislation and we had a unanimous passage, I think we made a compelling case to the managers of Ehmke and Max Place that dining services must be extended. We also went around and gotten petitions signed by the student body. We had hundreds and hundreds of signatures. So when they saw those petitions, when they saw the unanimous passage of the legislation, that's one way that I did that. So aside from just writing legislation, and another is Senator Ehmke's right.
Hey Rosa, I'm sorry, that was 1 minute.
Sorry.
But thanks all to the vice presidential candidates for We do have one unopposed candidate. We want to give her an opportunity to share her perspective in governance, and that is Secretary candidate Martha Poole.
Thank you all for coming out. It means a lot to us to have you here, and it shows that you care a lot about student government, and I really appreciate that. My name is Martha Poole. I'm a freshman here at SMU, and I'm a current double major in accounting and political science. I am running for student secretary because I believe that Senate needs somebody who can, like previous candidates have said, the job of secretary. Make sure that everyone's doing their job, keep track of the minutes, make sure that the communication between the student body and Senate is in place. And I have heard so many concerns over the past several weeks that people say, I don't know who my representative is, I don't know how to get into contact with my senator, I don't know what's going on in the Senate, but I want to know. And the reason why I want to be secretary is so I can keep track of that, make sure that that changes, that students know exactly what's going on in Senate, make sure that it's easy to get in contact with your proper representative and that your concerns are addressed. My platform is simple. It's more about you guys than anything that I want to accomplish, because my main job is to accomplish what you want from Senate. I want to have better communication, like I said, and connection between the student body, Senate, and the administration, making sure that the administration meets the needs of senators and the student body, and that everything that the student body wants is implemented and in a mutually agreeable, a solution that's mutually agreeable for everybody. I also want to proactively reach out to organizations, make sure that organizations know what Senate can do for them, and make sure that we're meeting their needs so they can effectively have great programming on campus and ways for people to get involved. I also want to enforce the rules and regulations of Senate, making sure that senators are doing their job, keeping up with their office hours, and attentive to the voice of the student body also with efficiency. I also want to make sure that Student Senate is no longer seen as sloppy or ineffective or lazy. I want to make sure the Senate is back on top of everything and there are no more bad editorials in the newspaper about senators not doing their job. As secretary, my goal is to make sure that Senate does exactly what we raised our right hands and promised to do. Also, I want to facilitate organizations, make sure they have the resources to put on great events and that they're aware of the ways that Senate can help them through advertising in the daily campus, funding through the Finance Committee, and just make sure that we're open to any and all suggestions they have. Finally, I just want to make sure that I be the best secretary that I can possibly be. I'm open to suggestions for ideas, and I promise to implement those as best I can within Senate and make sure Senate represents you. And that's all I have.
This time, in the audience section, we have about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes, where we're going to hear questions from you. I would ask that the candidates stand and kind of double up in these three podiums. We're going to take questions. What I'll do is that when you raise your hand, I'll call on you. I'd ask that you identify yourself and then direct your question to a candidate. That question, I would ask that the candidate be as reasonably brief as possible, so we can have as many questions as possible. We kind of filibuster on if we won't get very many questions. So the idea here is to try to get a lot of questions to a lot of candidates if at all possible. So at this time, the floor is open for you to raise your hand, and I'm going to call this person right here. Yes, you.
Hi, I'm Morgan Toll. I'm a member of the equestrian team at SMU. My question is for Katie. You mentioned that campus unity was something that you wanted to accomplish in your presidency if you were elected. What would you do to bridge the gap between student athletes and the rest of the student body?
I think that's a great question. Oh, sorry. Thank you for asking that. What I plan to do as student body president is have have the Senate put on different programs, kind of like mixers for the entire student body, and the question may be, how do we get students there? I propose to send ambassadors from the student senate to different organizations. So we'd have a senator go to the equestrian team and say, hey, equestrians, we're putting on this great event and we'd love to have you there. We'd send one to the football team, we'd send one to the ASA, we'd send one to the ABS, we'd send one all over campus. And I've learned through campaigning that people listen when you talk to them. And I've visited over, I can't even tell you how many organizations I've been just through campaigning. And if I can do all that in 1 week, then we can send a senator out to one organization per week. So that's what I would propose to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Next question on the back row there.
Hi, my name is Pat Faber. I'm the Vice President of the Fans Club. My question is actually for Alex. I know you didn't really get a chance to answer the question about your position in the Budget Committee, and I actually have a question that has to do that because it directly affects my organization. You have been extremely helpful to the HHBC and I'm sure a whole lot of other organizations in getting funding for our events. If you're elected, how would you continue to make this process go smoothly and efficiently for us and for other student organizations?
I think that one of the things that needs to be done is there's a lot of friction in Senate about being willing to suspend our own rules, and we kind of haven't. I mean, we run by a very specific rule system of rules called Robert's Rules of Order. I'm not going to go into any details, not necessary. It's extremely complicated, extremely esoteric, and I think that, and we actually witnessed it today, this afternoon, is a willingness to work with organizations who don't necessarily understand them. Sometimes we allow these rules that we like to abide by to hemorrhage us and to keep us from doing actions that we know are right, but we're not sure if they're by the rules or not. At some point, I think that Senate just needs to be more common sense. And that starts with finance, and it goes to Senate as a whole, and it goes to how we interact with organizations around the campus. I think we need to have a little bit more common sense in our finance process.
Okay, next question, how about right here?
Hi, my name is Samir Abdurrahman. I'm a junior here, and I'm part of the exec board of African Student Association. This question is to Alex Ehmke. So last night at the Association of Black Students meeting, you did say that you did not support the special interest seat. And all of the candidates, all you guys up there are kind of saying, you know, I want to make student body and the student senate really combined. But throughout this school year, the only way that I saw student senate like within like, you know, kind of advocating and kind of like, hey, I'm available, I really want to talk to you guys, was through the African American Senator Catherine Essex. She was the one that came and was like, I'm your senator, I want to talk to you, and that was her kind of obligation as African American senator. How are you going to provide, if you don't believe in a special interest seat, how are you going to provide kind of to make sure that my rights and, you know, like everything that I can do as a minority student, how are you going to kind of provide that?
Yeah, absolutely. The vice president of the student body is actually in charge of the liaison program, which year after year has been neglected. It was better this year, no offense meant to current Vice President Prentice, but in past years it just hasn't been very effective. And so the reason that you happen to have your organization very well communicated with is because Senator Catherine Essex is an exceptional senator. What we need is more exceptional senators. We need a vice president who's willing to organize that interaction, who's willing to oversee the liaison program and enforce sanctions for those senators who aren't communicating with the organizations that they are assigned. There's no reason why a given organization shouldn't know what's going on in Senate, especially when it's relevant to them, and that goal is accomplished through the liaison program.
Okay, one thing I want to do in my goal is try to mix up the questions. There's somebody with a question not for Katie or Alex this far. Hello, right here.
I'm Catherine Essex, I'm the African American Senator. My question is for Roza. Your list of leadership experience and extracurricular activities on campus is certainly impressive, but obviously Vice President is a huge time commitment, and it would be unfortunate, of course, to take on any responsibility that you couldn't give 100% to. So my question is, if you feel like you've had any scheduling conflicts that you've had to deal with so far, if you feel like you've not given your 100% to any of your organizations thus far, and if so, how you plan to correct that for next year?
I do realize that I'm, involved in various organizations on campus, and unfortunately, by seeking the position of vice president, I'm doing it knowing that I'm going to have to give up a lot of the positions in in the organizations I'm involved in. So, as much as I love those other organizations, I'm going to have to give them up if I'm elected, so that I can be fully committed. And in times when I find it, because I do hold leadership positions, and most of them, in times when I do find it feel overcommitted, then I drop the leadership role and can still continue as a member. Is how I have been able to alleviate some constraints.
Right here, question.
I'm going to go like this. Brad Namdar, The Other Perspective magazine. This question's for Sam. Something that really bothered me, and this came when I went to come speak at Student Senate one time. Medieval Club. It was a club that these kids had a passion for, medieval stuff, pretty much. And they asked for $750. And they came in here with faculty members, and they had advisors, and they met on campus, they met off campus, they did all the requirement. And what really pissed me off as a student was that it looked like a nerd bashing fest almost by Student Senate. And I'm not in the medieval club, but I mean, that's their passion. What are you going to do as student body president to stop that type of what I think hazing, or kind of like, this is our crew, we're going to decide which groups get allocated, we have bias, and we're biased, for our own, agendas and stuff like that, because that annoys every person in the student body. What are you going to do as president to prevent that stuff from happening?
That is an enormous and multifaceted question with an enormous and multifaceted answer. So I'm going to do my best with that. Organizations on campus are obviously the lifeblood of the campus. Whenever we get together, we're trying to represent SMU in the way that we're chosen to. Medieval Club in particular is a very specific type of organization. It's geared toward one goal. So I had support for Medieval Club. I served on Finance Committee, and that was one of the clubs that I did support. Not getting funding, it's not going to come out of something just like bias. It's going to come out of some requirement not being met. So I can guarantee you that biases, whenever they enter a room, and they do, they're quickly quelled, because that's something that we're trying to do as a body. We're trying to serve you in an impartial manner and get all the organizations moving in the same direction, which is growth. So that was a sad situation. I agree with that. But as student body president, one thing that I'm really going to implement is a system of communication where there's a direct conduit to the people that you need to make your goals come true, whatever that may be. And if that has to be a direct line Gmail just from me to all of you, I'd set it up. But I guarantee you there's plenty of efficient ways that whenever there's a complaint, it doesn't have to go through Senate to get heard. It can come straight to me. So direct communication with the student body is something that I really like to do, because as a leader, I think that's probably most important. Serving your constituency in a selfless manner is the best that I can do.
Well done. Thanks. How about a question right here?
Hi, I have a question for all students. I'm a transfer student as well as other people in the room. And what I want to know is, one, who do I go to when I want my voice heard? And two, what are you going to do for transfer students?
I think that's a good question. I mean, I think transfer students, to be honest, fit into the category of other representational issues within the Senate. I think the Senate right now, I think special interest seats are important. I think I'm glad we have them. I want to keep them. But to you specifically, I think this fits under, I'd like to make kind of an ad hoc sort of position. And that's where, when needed, you guys can come in. When needed, the athletic department can come in. When needed, whoever it might be, whatever their issue is, you guys can come in. It's definitely representation. It's impossible to represent 100% of people. I'm going to say that. I think Senate does a good job representing. Obviously, there are cases where we don't, and we need to work on that. But I think creating a special kind of group or classification for you guys so you have, I don't want to say priority access, but you have an easier streamlined to Senate, so you get your voice across. I think that'd be a good way to start.
All right, one or two more questions right there in the back.
This is for Austin as well. I know in your speech you talked about a lot about students and everything like that. As president, you are going to be representing minority students. As a member of SAMHSA, I go to a lot of events. What I want to know is, in this past year, have you been to any organizational events? If so, what organizations, and are you involved with them in any way?
Yes, is your answer. I have been to many events. And obviously, the SAMHSA does a fantastic job putting on student events. There are many organizations. Every organization goes through the SAMHSA, so attending every event is impossible.
I'm not saying you have to attend every event. I just want to know.
Continuing the answer, actually, I stepped in the STEP show last semester with NPHC. I've been to a debate, kind of a briefing with like ABS and SSS and things like that. This year, Martin Luther King, I made it out for the walk, the Unity Walk on campus in the morning. I mean, there are things amongst others, Chaz events, East Night Market last year. Things. I go to events. I don't go to every event. You're right, and it's not possible for me to actually get to every event. So.
Okay, I'm sorry to report this is going to be my last question poll, and please understand that these candidates are public, and I'm sure we'll be happy to deal with you, but to be efficient with everyone's time, I'm going to make a pick here, and then we're going to go to closing comments. And so I'm going to take this question right here.
This question is for Austin as well. You're just lucky today. Of the many pieces of legislation you've written, how many did you co-sponsor, and how many did you actually author?
Okay. This year, I wrote 5 pieces of legislation. Excuse me. Last year, I wrote 1. Co-sponsored last year's. Wrote 2 on my own this year. Let's see, the fall semester, the 2 parking ones, having to do with parking starting around next year. Taking at 4:30. I'll talk to you guys afterwards about that. And then I co-sponsored this liaison program, getting it into legislation. I co-sponsored an endowment committee, reforming that, which helps to increase the Student Senate scholarships so we can give you guys, the students, more money. Because I know as tuition rises, we need more money to give to students. And then there you go, there's the 5. So half of them were my own and half of them were co-sponsored.
All right. Thank you, audience. Again, I apologize that we couldn't maybe go all night because lots of questions were starting to pop up. I'm going to ask that the vice presidential candidates remain at the podiums, and we're going to have our closing 1 to 2 minute remarks. And I'm going to also ask that we reverse the order from what we did before. And so we're going to go in reverse alphabetical order. So that will have us beginning with Roza Esau for her closing remarks of 1 to 2 minutes.
So as I mentioned, the words genuine, driven, and passionate come to mind. And I believe that with those 3 qualities, I can represent you as the best vice president I can be. With those 3 qualities, I've overcome language barrier. With those 3 qualities, I've overcome financial constraints. I've overcome many trials and tribulations, and I know that if I've overcome enormous trials throughout my life, that with those 3 qualities, I can honestly and sincerely represent you as the best vice president I can be. I've gone above and beyond to represent the issues. I am the only candidate here standing that is actually serving both as a chair and as a vice chair. The reason why I joined the vice chair of the scholarship committee is because, in the beginning of the year when I was a senator, we had a lot of issues with scholarships, and scholarships weren't being fairly awarded. And we actually, I filed a complaint, knowing that filing the complaint would take me out of the process of getting a scholarship. And through that, we were able to find out that one of the students who wasn't supposed to qualify to get a scholarship got it. So I went above and beyond, and I joined